When it finally came time to retire, we needed to get out of the city with its noise and crime. We wanted a place where we couldn't see or hear the neighbors, and they couldn't see or hear us. We found an old house on 11 wooded acres in rural Tennessee. It was an amazing find at the price. Down a winding road, then up on a hill, we found our retirement sanctuary. We couldn't believe it hadn't been scooped up by a local from the nearby town. We made an offer right away and moved in. The only crime was coyotes stealing chickens, and the only noise keeping us up at night was an old owl in a tree outside the bedroom window. Oh, and our dogs barking at all of the wildlife that roamed our land at all hours. It's an old house, so of course there was some creaking and moaning at night, probably from the wind. We didn't know what caused the creaking, but like I said, it's an old house, built by hand, so we didn't think anything of it at first. But it didn't take long until I missed the sound of sirens and the voices of the nearby neighbors, and knowing that they could hear us too if we ever needed to scream for help. We were truly alone out here in rural Tennessee on 11 wooded acres in an old house built by a man and his wife that lived and died here. It started with shadows in the corner of my eye, cold drafts across my feet in the wee hours, and whispers. At first, I didn't tell my husband. I thought I was being silly, a city girl in the country. And I knew what he would say, the same thing I was telling myself. Shadows are from the terrible lighting. Of course there are drafts. And treetops whisper in the wind. That's what happens in the woods. And then the shadows moved from the corner of my eye to dead center in front of me. The cold draft became an icy room with 2 people and 4 dogs in July. And the whispers became words. And then I wasn't the only one to see and hear them. My sister and niece came down from Ohio to see our new old home tucked away in the back hollers of the South. They were excited to stay in the converted bedroom, redesigned from an odd space that, based on the strange equipment and tools left behind, had been used for canning or some sort of preparation and storage of vegetables and meat. We found some twin bed frames for the guest room at a local thrift shop. That's where we met Jebediah. At a half-mile away as the crow flies, he's our closest neighbor. He was cordial, but not thrilled with having damn Yankees in his neck of the woods. He let us know not to bother him or his kin, that they wouldn't help us with anything that went on in our house. What he called that place y'all didn't have the good sense not to buy. We soon found out it was our home that he thought was damned, not us Northerners. Not yet, anyhow. I was helping my niece get settled in when she saw her. She didn't jump, was not frightened, just accepting. Auntie, who just went down the hallway. My niece was calm, but my heart skipped a little. There's no one here, kiddo. They all went to town for supplies. We're going to have s'mores tonight. I smiled as sincerely as I could. It wasn't one of us, Auntie? Did she live here before you? My niece told me it was an old woman in a flannel nightgown, headed for my room. She nodded at my niece as she went by. My blood ran cold, but I tried not to show concern. Did she say anything? I asked my niece as I hung up clothes from our suitcase. No. Does she talk to you? She asked, carelessly flipping through a dusty old book she found somewhere in the living room. The front door burst open, and after 1 second of abject terror, I laughed at myself as I heard the chatter of everyone returning with chocolate and marshmallows. Nothing like a roaring fire, warm treats, and chilled wine to take my mind off ghosts. The only thing braver than a man with a beer buzz is 2 sisters splitting 3 bottles of wine. We giggled our way down the hall to my bedroom so we could keep talking while she used the bathroom. I threw myself across my bed and hiccuped while she peed by the light of the hall lamp. She yammered on about what I don't know because I wasn't paying attention until she suddenly stopped talking. I rolled over slowly to see if she was okay. She was still sitting there, pants down, knees knocking, and her mouth hanging open. We managed to get some lights on, her pants up and hands washed, while she told me what she saw. My sister said it was an old man. At first, he looked like one of those silhouette life-size cutouts that people put in their yards leaning up against a tree. And then he moved, she said, grabbing for her glass of wine. We both felt uncomfortably sober now. The old man had put his hand on my shoulder and leaned over near my ear. My sister said it looked like he wanted to tell me something. She said she couldn't see his face really, but somehow she knew he wanted to tell me something. I got my niece tucked in with a glass of milk and my sister with a sippy cup of Chardonnay before climbing in bed next to my husband. Our oldest dog, the pack leader, climbed up between us and emitted a low, menacing growl. My husband pulled the summer weight bed throw over my shoulder and wrapped a protective arm around me. "Are they in the room now?" he asked. "Yes," I told him. "What are they saying?" my husband whispered to me. "They want us to know that this is their house." Welcome back to the Paranormal Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. This story was submitted by an old friend of mine, Miss Gail E. Moss. Now, Miss Moss is an author and storyteller. You can find links to her and her work in the show notes. Her regular subject matter is fiction, and it's fantastic. But when she learned I was talking about ghosts and hauntings this season, she messaged me saying, my house is haunted. Thank you for sharing your story, Gail. In a 1978 poll, Gallup reported that 11% of the American adult population held a belief in the existence of ghosts. The poll taken in 1990 found that number had increased to 25%. In 2001, that number became 38%, with 42% believing that houses could be haunted. Not sure how to math that math, but let's move on. That was a while ago, decades ago. With the advancement of science, evolvement in this age of reason, logical skeptics everywhere you turn, that steady increase must have fallen somewhat. That would only make sense, having no proof of the afterlife at this point, no proof that ghosts exist. YouGov did a similar poll in 2021, finding 41% had a belief. That is 2 out of every 5 Americans. No proof. What supports all of this rising belief? If anything, we should expect this number to go down and continue to fall. We can imagine some of those who were polled held a belief only sans an actual experience. Some may have been inspired to belief by all of the ghost hunting shows and cinema. Some just simply wanted to believe. And that is all perfectly fine. But then there are those who have seen them. Pew Research polled 1 in 5 Americans who reported not just believing, but seeing one. And there are those who base their opinion on evidence. Not proof, that is just not there, but evidence. That which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Christopher Hitchens. Those skeptical of this phenomenon could say something like this. The immediate problem, though, is that whether you like it or not, there is evidence of ghosts, and plenty of it. And that is where I am beginning this season-long exploration of it. Believing in ghosts because there is evidence pointing to their existence. And because I personally believe I have found such evidence. My purpose this season is to test my theory, question what I think I already know, ask myself how much confirmation bias is playing a role in what I have experienced and concluded thus far, and see at the end of it all if there is truly enough evidential ground to stand on. Proof? No. But if the evidence points to something like a neon sign, I mean, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, I like to be very transparent with you guys on each of these intro episodes to the subjects. Just let you know where I stand before we begin. Many times I have bluntly declared that I didn't know much of anything, if anything, about the topic. Ghosts, though? Hauntings? Now there's a subject I might tell you I know a thing or two about. It's something I've been curious about since childhood, and in more recent years have even set out to investigate it for myself. But do I really understand this phenomenon like I think I do? Does anybody? I don't know. But I am willing to have an open mind and question everything I think I already know. My preliminary look at the information has already taught me some new things, caused me to already begin to consider alternative explanations for what we are experiencing here. I loved Hitchens, nothing but love. But his quote is too perfect not to use as an illustration. That which can be asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. That is true. But see, I would argue there is an excess of evidence when it comes to ghosts and hauntings. And outright dismissal of the subject is due to the inability to understand that evidence, what it's saying. Well, we're going to take a crack at it. Welcome to Season 7, and welcome back, you guys. Thank you so much for hanging in there with me while I took my muchas necesario break, dudes. It was so wonderful, and I got some much appreciated extra sleep and relaxation and a little bit of time to start the early research on the topic. I am reading and researching throughout the season, of course, but I do like to get my head start. I am not going to attempt to show or tell you about the mountain of books that I got this go around because it's excessive and embarrassing. But I will say thank you to my patrons, because with the amount that I accrued over the summer and the money that I spent on them, I might be out of a home and recording from an alley right now without your support. Thank you for all that you guys do to help this show. And for my regular listeners, I sure missed ya. Let's get into this, shall we? All right, so for anyone familiar with the regular format of the show, you know that this intro to the season episode is just that. This is where I slide back into the host seat, talk about some upcoming concepts that I plan to cover. We'll go through basic terms, basic knowledge. It's a teaser. I tease. So, if you are new to the show, stay if you would like the primer, but if you wish to get right to the deep dives, keep your ears out. September 17th, we will be starting with the history of ghosts and hauntings. Juicy stuff, right? Next Tuesday, though, we welcome our first Season 7 guest onto the program. You guys, awesome people, gravitate like magic into my sphere. That is what I keep throwing back out into the universe in hopes that it keeps happening, because Blaine Duncan, executive producer of Amityville: An Origin Story on MGM Plus, will be joining me. Crazy cool, right? I am really looking forward to that chat and, of course, sharing it with you all. I do have a few more announcements to share with you today. However, let's go ahead and get into some of the information, and I'll just drop those somewhere along the line. Just little surprise nuggets for you to look forward to. So first up, what comes into your mind if I were to tell you that my house is haunted? What does one mean when they say they believe in or they have encountered a ghost? Are they talking about a poltergeist, something residual, a loved one who has crossed over and has returned to check in on them? Well, yeah, all of the above and more. Kind of. Ghost can more accurately be used as this collective term to cover a surprising amount of phenomena. So let's explore some of the types of ghosts that I have come across. Poltergeists. It's unclear whether it's actually appropriate to place the poltergeist phenomenon in this collective. There is an argument to be made that rather than an entity, poltergeists are the result of psi phenomena, human caused. We will be digging specifically into poltergeists at a later time, but all of the source material thus far has labeled it ghostly, so I will share that here with you. Poltergeist is German for noisy spirit, noisy ghost, rumbling ghost. Most people have heard this by now, I think. This occurrence usually involves a more hands-on approach by an unseen force. Throwing, shoving furniture, breaking things, wall rapping, disembodied stomping feet, door slamming, all of the things that you might see an angry teenager do if they could freely vent that anger with zero repercussions. All of which takes place without any clear understanding of how it is, no clear explanation for the activity that occurs. Funny enough, this activity often revolves around teenagers, leading some parapsychologists and investigators to conclude this phenomenon is likely being caused by the emotional state of the teen and not the action of a pissy entity. Now, it's not always teenagers. Cases have also been documented with both young children and some adults the world over. As far as the study of ghosts and hauntings go, poltergeist activity appears to be some of the most well documented and studied. If there is going to be any bridge built across the divide between the paranormal and the scientific, I wouldn't be surprised at all if poltergeists laid that foundation. Let's talk about residual versus intelligent for a second, because not all sightings and encounters are the same. A residual haunting is a loop of something, some scene, some act carried out, some disembodied verbiage or sounds playing on a loop over and over again, infinitum to the end of time, never changing. Why? How? There are theories as to what causes a residual haunting, such as stone tape theory, the theory that environmental elements and materials can hold onto the energy of human thought and emotion. This would explain why many hauntings thought to be residual contain either a replay of very traumatic events when the emotion at the time would have been the highest, thus imprinting itself on the surrounding materials, or the replay is of something far more mundane. For example, the image of a woman in a blue dress is seen walking up the stairs and turning right on the landing at 8 p.m. every evening. Why would this be imprinted? Well, perhaps she dearly loved the house, or that path up the stairs and to the right was the path she regularly took every evening as she went up to check on her sleeping children. It was a regular occurrence, and the wood of the stairs and the walls captured the moment in time. Once a residual haunting has been diagnosed, unfortunately, there isn't much a person can do to rid themselves of the occurrence, but fortunately, they have been reported to fade over time. Also, though it may be a nuisance, it is never going to be a problem or a threat to you, because it is my understanding that it isn't an actual entity. The figure seen in a residual haunting is not actually stuck there, doomed to remain in a purgatory-like state to repeat their conscious efforts or actions forever and ever, just like the actors in a movie are not doomed to repeat their actions in that one film that you really like and watch every Christmas Eve. They long gone. They're on to bigger and better things. But the imprint of them remains. It is thought by many who investigate the paranormal that most hauntings are in fact going to be residual, but not all of them. The other type is called an intelligent haunting. The intelligent haunting is thought to be caused by a conscious, earthbound spirit capable of interacting and communicating with the living. It's theorized this type of ghost haunts out of necessity, fear, or even love. They may feel like they have unfinished business. They might be afraid of what will happen should they officially cross over. They may not want to leave people that they loved behind. In the event that their death was sudden, they may not realize that they have died. If their death was traumatic or they were unfairly taken too soon, they may be hanging around out of spite and anger, and you're going to hear about it, right? That might be getting into Molly, you in danger, girl territory as far as a haunting goes. But maybe not. Maybe not. If you have an intelligent haunting on your hands and it is a problem for you, this is where home and business owners would want to call in for help. It is believed these particular ghosts are conscious of what is going on. They used to be living human beings just like you, and they need someone who can more clearly communicate with them and figure out what is causing them to haunt, followed by the offer of a solution, hopefully. So, who you gonna call? Depending on the severity of the haunting, help can range from a paranormal investigator to a trusted psychic medium to someone who specializes in cleansing houses of spiritual energy to a Catholic priest. It would be a case-by-case basis because just like every person is a unique individual snowflake, so too is the ghost sitting beside you listening along to the show. Crisis apparitions. Now, this was fascinating information to stumble across. This particular occurrence is probably something you have heard about, but may be surprised to learn, as I was, that it actually has a name. We were just sitting there when suddenly I felt my mother come up behind me and put her hand on my shoulders, and I knew she was dead. I turned to Joe. Mama just left, and she's dead, I told him. This is from Billie Holiday's memoir, where she is recounting this experience that she had with what is called a crisis apparition. She leads the moment by telling readers that she didn't believe in things like ghosts or spirits, but she believed what happened in this moment. She would get confirmation on the following day from her road manager that her, as far as Billie was aware, healthy 38-year-old mother had passed suddenly the night before. But she didn't need the confirmation. She already knew. Her mother told her, "There are thousands of accounts of the living receiving a visit, feeling the presence, or hearing the voice of a loved one, only to find out later that it occurred around the moment of their loved one's passing. These apparitions are not considered to be a haunting, though there are some stories of crisis apparitions who might continue to reappear to their loved one in order to get a message or a warning across to them, and the person just ain't picking up what the ghost is putting down. But for the remainder of these cases, the crisis apparition is the ghost who is taking the opportunity to travel sometimes vast distances in order to say goodbye to their loved ones and to let them know that they are okay. All will be well." In some cases, folks have reported having full-on conversations with the apparition following their death. These occurrences can also take place in your dreams. Numerous stories of people being visited by their relative in their dream and then waking with the understanding that that was their goodbye and they had passed. Some researchers have suggested the crisis apparition is simply a form of telepathy, of a knowing. And there are plenty of accounts of this definitely being the case. People report just suddenly knowing their loved one has departed. But telepathy is quite a different experience compared to what is being reported in these crisis apparition accounts. Telepathy is not normally so specific as seeing someone standing in front of you and having a full-on conversation with them. It also doesn't really explain the timing and the circumstances of some of these accounts. These experiences have occurred with folks who are skeptical of psi phenomena, people who may not have been so closely bonded with the deceased that this kind of sudden connection would make any sense. It's happened with people who weren't even thinking about the deceased at all and are taken by surprise by this event. Telepathy is an interesting theory, but it's a game of one. Crisis apparition experiences require the presence and contact with the deceased party. Okay, so there's just a few types and levels that we might find under the ghost header. We are going to move on to associated phenomena in just a second, just a nanosecond. But before I leave our introduction of some of the types of ghosts that we should be familiar with, I want to take just a second to talk about ghost versus spirit, because this distinction has been explained to me multiple times over the course of the entire podcast. It is my understanding that ghosts are thought to be those who may haunt a location or a person, those who are earthbound, those who, for whatever reason, have not crossed over. They continue to exist in their ghostly capacity among the living. A spirit, on the other hand, is on the other end of the same spectrum. Spirits do not haunt anything. They have crossed into the light and therefore are not bound to the physical in any sense. They primarily exist on the other side, a higher plane, in heaven, whatever you want to call it. However, spirits have a much wider understanding and perspective of things now that they have crossed. They are not hindered by the same thought process, or connection to the physical, prior biases or addictions, prior beliefs or discriminations. And they have the fullest of full capacity for love and empathy and connection with their loved ones still residing on Earth. They also have far more unrestricted abilities compared to a ghost and are still capable of visitations and contact, though there may be reasons that we cannot understand that they would choose not to interfere with the living, whereas a ghost may throw such caution to the wind. There have been some awesomely beautiful stories told of connection with a passed on loved one that it was believed had crossed over, was a spirit, of receiving reassuring messages and loving signs. These are beautiful stories. And we will discuss more of the spirit's existence and communications down the road when we reach the season on the afterlife. This season, I have specifically designed to focus on ghosts. Though I may use ghost and spirit interchangeably as general terms to describe what I am talking about, I just want to be clear the distinction of which entity we are learning about this season. I'm hopefully getting ahead of any emails asking why I'm only making it about the scary, darker stuff and ignoring the going into the light part and reconnecting with soul groups and reincarnation. We will, believe me, we certainly will. But that is going to be later. One final thing on this, and then we are moving on. I don't know how I feel about the concept of an earthbound ghost. It's an uncomfortable thought to think that anyone is stuck here. If that is the case, at this early stage, I would say I'm much more inclined to think it to be a choice to remain for the reasons that I've previously mentioned, rather than a forced situation or like an inability to find a way out. I don't have any like proof or evidence of that. That is just my belief, because I want to believe that the universe is just. But again, these are the early days of this journey. More information on that to be revealed soon enough. All right, let's take a quick moment before we shift over to associated phenomena to make some of those announcements. I have some upcoming events I really think you guys will be interested in. The first event is taking place this Saturday, September 7th. As some of you already know, I host another program called Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen, along with Damien from Life Beyond 6 Feet and Joey and Gil from the Black Cat Report. We have been prepping and fundraising for our Night at the Night House investigation in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, taking place on September 28th, where we will all converge from the farthest corners of the country for an overnight live-streamed investigation of the historic and haunted Night House. September 28th also just happens to be National Ghost Hunting Day, which is pretty cool. But you know what's even cooler about this event? Contributors to the event are going to be calling the shots and deciding where the night will take us. Now, our Indiegogo fundraiser has gone very well thus far. However, the campaign is coming to a close, and we've still got some funds to raise that will allow every one of us to travel to the location. We don't want to leave any of the hosts behind. So, because we a bunch of crazy, throw caution to the wind, fun-loving cats, the cast of B3 has decided to host one of the biggest paranormal online parties I think I have ever been a part of. It will be fashioned after those old school telethons that we used to watch on TV when we were kids. I do believe Joey is going to be in charge of that like thermometer thingy that will go up as folks contribute. So you'll get to watch the progress throughout the course of the evening. We will begin the live stream at 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, and go all night, baby. We have a rad lineup of guests for the evening. Some podcasters, some investigators, storytellers. There's going to be a few familiar faces in the lineup. Scott Tompkins from the Bigfoot Mapping Project will be joining us. Christopher Balzano, Timothy Miller from Miller's Monsters. I am so incredibly psyched for these guests. And they all come in prepared with ghost stories for you. What a way to kick off spooky season, dudes. Halloween begins the 1st of September in my household. I don't care what anybody has to say about it. In addition to all of the amazing guests, the lines are open, my friends. Call in with any story, any topic, any question. You'll have the opportunity to speak with our guests as well and ask them questions. It's a free-for-all as far as the phone line goes. There's going to be props and costumes and dad jokes from Joey, I'm sure. And guess what? There's also going to be giveaways. As the night proceeds, every time we hit another milestone in our contributions, anyone in the chat at that time will have the opportunity to win some swag from our 3 shows. You can win stickers, bookmarks, t-shirts, hats, and maybe I'll throw one of my awesome hoodies in there once we hit our final goal. I've got the link where you can tune in on Saturday down in the show notes. Put it in your phone calendar or just click that link and the notification bell to receive a message when we are about to go live. It is hard to beat that announcement, but I got another event I think you're going to want to catch. Paranorm Girl's first Halloween live special was so spectacular. Let's do it again. Sunday, October 27th, PGP will stream its 2nd annual Halloween celebration. We're going bigger, badder, and better than ever, baby. I will be in my Halloween costume again, but of course, we'll do giveaways and trivia and mystery guests and ghosts. I love Halloween. I'm totally geeking out right now, but I love Halloween. It is my favorite holiday. Please come celebrate with me again, October 27th. More information to come, my dears. All right, them's the announcements. Let's cover some basic terms, concepts, associated phenomena, and do a brief overview of what I have got in store for you guys. Most people have never and will never see a ghost. I know, disappointing, but true. Now, that is not to say they will never experience an encounter with one. How might you know that there is one around if you cannot see it? Well, there are numerous things that can signal their presence. If you suspect you may be dealing with the departed, this is my personal recommendation. I would recommend that you start a ghost log for any and all of the following activity. See how quickly it stacks up. You might be surprised. Now, the first signs for many that they have got a ghost are unexplained noises, like footsteps when no one else is around, knocking or banging, and the feeling that you are being watched, or the feeling of someone's presence. Those are pretty commonly reported. Other signals of the otherworldly can include electrical malfunctions, often with lights, phantom odors. This is an interesting one because it's hard to discount if it's a smell that really shouldn't be there. I have experienced this one twice, and both times I could not debunk or explain it. It came on very suddenly, and it was overwhelming and definitely out of place. You don't often just imagine smells. You can't really force yourself to smell something that just is not there. It's a hard one to explain. Cold spots. Objects that have moved or appeared suddenly that defy explanation, disembodied voices, hello, and if you have pets, they may exhibit sudden unusual behavior, reacting or interacting with something that you cannot see. Hissing, growling, barking, staring intensely up at nothing at the foot of your bed. Now, there are associated phenomena that may or may not occur when a ghost is present. These seem to be more so like unintentional side effects of the ghost itself, and some of these have been highly debated in the field of paranormal research and investigation. Orbs. I know, groan if you must. This is a highly debated concept, but orbs will definitely come up later. The basic definition of an orb is that it is an often white, though it can be other colors, sphere of light, often captured in photographs, though some have claimed to see them hovering with the naked eye. Ghost hunters and researchers have made the claim that orbs are a manifestation of spirits of the dead. The reason many doubt the validity of orbs is because there are far too many ways to explain them in terms of physical reality that it is actually kind of hard not to view every orb photo that you come across with a skeptical eye. Dust particles, pollen, water droplets, lens smudge, bugs have often been mistaken for orbs. The phenomenon of backscatter in photography is relatively common, especially with the modern day use of digital cameras. Backscatter is usually created when a camera's flash is used, often in low light settings, and it is reflected off of particles or small objects in the air that are not in focus or are moving, causing them to appear in the photo as what looks like a perfect little ball of light. This effect is also seen on infrared video cameras because of the brightness of the infrared LEDs brightly illuminating even the smallest particles that are close to the lens. There is room to argue in support of orbs, though. Not every orb photo is taken with a flash in low lighting. Not every one can be explained with particles in the air, and some of them have faces in them. So, mists, also often seen on film and sometimes with the naked eye, can also be debunked using the same skeptical eye in which you view orbs. Being skeptical, especially when it comes to investigating a ghost or a haunting, is a good thing and incredibly important when it comes to any possible evidence that you may capture on film. You want to debunk as much as you can so that what you are left with at the end of the night is real, good, solid evidence that you can then go show the world and hopefully apply to the mystery on your hands as to what or who is haunting the location. I will say the debunking methods for both orbs or mists, though, does not help explain when folks claim to see either of them with the naked eye, right? So approach these things rationally, but hold space for the possibility. Or don't. You don't have to. I will hold space for the possibility that orbs and mist can be ghostly. I've seen some pretty intriguing photos over the last few years. Heard some pretty intriguing stories. Ectoplasm! Ugh. Do we have to? Must we? I am mentioning it here just in case, it comes up later and I have to reconsider my earlier findings on the matter. If you are curious what those findings were, catch episode 55, Ectoplasm, Tell Me No Lies. Ectoplasm is said to be variable in appearance. It has been described as viscous, vaporous, paste-like, fine fabric-like, cold, wet, warm, gauze-like, bioluminescent. It requires the use of a physical medium's body who uses their psychic energy to emit the substance from their numerous orifices so that the spirit of whom they channel may drape it over their non-physical body in order to interact with the physical world. It also requires a very, very dark room, and for you to definitely not reach out to try and touch it. No touchy-touchy. Ghost lights, also referred to as will-o'-the-wisps, appear all over the world. They are the bedrock of many an urban legend and are thought to be the manifestation of wandering spirits. They appear in the atmosphere without obvious cause. They can move about. They can follow people. There are cases in which people interacted with the lights and concluded there was some sort of intelligence behind them. In the modern era, they have been explained away with optical illusions created by headlights, combustion of flammable gases, ball lightning, meteors, imagination. There is much to consider with this particular facet of ghosts, especially considering ghost light history predates common man-made explanations such as headlights. Ball lightning really only occurs during thunderstorms. The lights are seen on clear nights. Multiple ghost lights can be seen at one time, moving independently of one another and just moving around, period. Unlike a meteor or a meteor shower, they occur in places that aren't emitting swamp gas, and they are often witnessed by numerous people at once, defying one person's overactive imagination. So, the explanation isn't always convenient, and the mystery of ghost lights persists. All right. That just about covers the basics. That is the information we will need to at least begin the season and hopefully more comfortably understand anything to follow. Regarding what is to follow, this season we are going to explore things like what causes a haunting, communications with the dead, capturing EVPs, tools of the trade, and the ins and outs of ghost hunting, if that is your jam, haunted objects, ships, cars, trains, cemeteries, and houses, of course. Ghost lights, that was a special request. I am way excited to dive into that one for you, River. Did you know people marry ghosts? Yeah, we're going to talk about it. Did you know ghosts have solved their own murders? Yeah, we definitely going to talk about that. And I do have a couple of special focus episodes up my sleeve. We'll keep those as a surprise for now, but yes, we have a massive season in front of us, but a fun one. Really excited to get into it. That is going to be a wrap for today. Join me for a final note. So I got to follow up with Gail, our storyteller from the top of the show. And she mentioned something that will never cease to reinvigorate my inspiration to keep on chipping away at these mysteries. She told me, prior to her moving into the house, she was a skeptic. She did not believe in ghosts. Even in the face of a previous experience that she'd had while house sitting for a friend, at that time convinced herself she was just overreacting. And that is a fairly normal way of responding. I've talked before about how hard a paradigm shift like this can be on folks. But what is one to do when you can no longer deny what you once thought impossible? Either you make excuses, live in denial, or you accept what the evidence is telling you. When a skeptic changes their position in regards to the paranormal, it says something about people's incredible ability to change their belief based on compelling evidence. It says something about reality to see a paradigm shift like that it's so much bigger than our current understanding of it. It says something about this phenomenon and the rest of the mysteries the paranormal has to offer. It's one of my favorite types of stories to hear, the skeptic who experienced the undeniable, because that says to me, even if I don't understand, it's worth exploring further. Thank you again for your awesome story, Gail. Speaking of awesome stories, I got some awesome feedback about the Spectral short series over the summer. Thank you guys so much. I am so glad you enjoyed them. I enjoyed getting them together for y'all and getting to play around with a bit of a spookier tone. Now, as I mentioned, if enough folks were interested in hearing more episodes like those, I would find a way to incorporate it into the new season. There is nothing quite like hearing real people talk about their personal experiences with the paranormal. So, here's the dealio. Paranorm Girl now has a story recording line dedicated only to receiving your personal stories. Give us a call, won't you? Try it out. 208-717-1655 is the number. Leave your name, where the experience took place, and then tell your story. If you would like to remain anonymous, that is totally fine. Just say it at the top of the message. If you need more than the 3 minutes that the inbox allows for voice messages, simply hang up and call back. I just ask that callers keep their stories to 6 minutes or less. The line will always be considered an open line to any experience you would like to share. However, if you have a story that falls under the season's subject, you may get to hear the replay of it quite a bit sooner. When will these stories be played? Good question. If it is a seasoned subject story, so right now, any experiences with ghosts and or a haunting, those will be played on one of the numerous solo deep dives during the regular course of the season. That is actually how I began the show. For any of my veteran listeners, I had a segment back in the day where I read listener submissions on the show. But I'd like to hear you tell it. I like this better. For any open line calls, I will be posting bonus Spectral Shorts episodes to feature those stories as well. Again, that number is 208-717-1655. Pass it along to friends and family who would like to share and hear their story on the program. If you would like to support the show, there are many ways to do so. Follow me on social at Paranormal Girl Pod. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok. At Paranormal Girl Pod is also how you can find me on YouTube, where I play the video recording of each of these episodes every week. If you are watching this on YouTube right now, please make sure you hit the thumbs up and are subscribed to the channel. All of these actions you can take really helps the show reach new ears. And it motivates me too, to see folks resonating, vibing with the show enough to like, comment, and continue to follow the journey. Paranormal Girl also has a Patreon where I offer early access to episodes, exclusive access to backstage guest chats, private movie nights, merch, and more. I also shout out new patrons on the program. Mr. David Aguilar has joined my baby ghost tier, where he received this shout out for jumping on board and helping me fight the good fight. Thank you, David. You have been such an awesome listener for a long time now. I met David last year when he began the show from the very beginning, intro to Shadow People, and has been diligently making his way through the entire program, following the entire trajectory. I never expect anyone to do anything other than just tune into the season where I cover their favorite subject. So when I hear from someone who is digging my approach, loving my paranormal bar hopping to find answers, and just following the journey as it unfolded, I just get such a kick out of it. Sincerely appreciate you, sir. As one of my baby ghosts, David will also enjoy new episodes early, be invited to private movie nights and streams, and also have access to some of those awesome backstage guest chats. Now, while this next person is not a brand new patron, they've been supporting the show for quite a while now, he has loved what we do over here so much. He's upgraded his membership from researcher to paranormal investigator, my $10 tier. And that absolutely deserves a shout out. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you for your help and advice and support of not just this show, but Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen as well. You are good people. I am so glad to have you in my corner, man. If you would like to join Dwayne and David and the rest of the awesome patrons and become a major source of support for the program, visit patreon.com/paranormalgirlpod. All of my tiers are pretty budget friendly. That is on purpose because I wanted to be able to welcome as many folks as I could to the education by making it easy on their wallets. So check out what I offer over there and pick the tier that suits you best. That is going to do it. This has been your Season 7 premiere. You've been great. I've been Kristen. I will see you guys back here next week for a conversation with producer Blaine Duncan. Until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.